Welcome back. My name is Dee, and this is Dee's Bookish Musings, where I'm sharing my love for reading at my own pace. Welcome if you are new here. I do invite you to join my little family here if you like all things books. If you are returning, thanks so much for coming back. I really do appreciate your continued support. This is going to be my first book review. I've never done like a dedicated book review, but I just finished reading a book, and if you follow me you might know what that book is. I did do a reading vlog introducing the book that I was going to read in February, and this book took over my February. It took over my February because I took about 21 days to read the book. First of all, I was busy, but also the book is not a book that you can just, or I wanted to just read. It is so layered. So I'm talking about this book that I haven't even showed you, but I wanted to come and do a dedicated review on this book. It is so much to be said about this book, y'all. This is The Street by Petry. I'm late to the party, but I'm glad I made it to the party and I finally read this book. I love this book. This book was a 10. It was a 10 for so many different reasons. I went ahead and bought my own copy. This is my spanking brand new copy because I got this from Thrift Books. And although I love this book, I love it. I even added my own like notations to the book. The book does have someone else's like thoughts and writing in the book, which I did read because I like to read what people were thinking and why they highlighted a certain passage, and if I felt the way that they were feeling. I like this book. I like it for that, but I wanted to have my own untouched copy. So let me talk to you about this book and why it was the best book that I have ever read. This one was a 10. This one was hands down a 10. So I don't know if I'm going to spoil this book. I'm going to try not to spoil it just in case someone else has not read the book. I won't give major plots away, okay? But I am going to discuss the book because I just want to talk about this book. So this follows Ludi Johnson. Ludi Johnson, I want to say she's African American, in Harlem in the 1940s. And her trying to survive under the circumstances in which she has dealt. So Ludi Johnson, just to give you a backstory, a little bit, we meet her as a married woman. Ludi Johnson and her husband appear to be happy. They live in Jamaica, Queens. They have like a little small house. When suddenly, I think his name is Jim, her husband either loses his job and he's not able to find a job. And so that forces Ludi to make a decision to go to work, because in this time period, Black women can find jobs. They just have limited opportunities, right? In this time period in Harlem, back then, it was not common for a Black woman to, have a job other than like a domestic housekeeper, a maid, something like that. Ludi did have education, but she still was not able to propel in her profession. She had so many constraints against her. So when Jim could not find a job, Ludi made a decision to get a job working with a wealthy couple in another state. So she had to travel to this job. And in doing that, she left Bub, her 8-year-old son, and her husband back at home. And she actually resided in the house, took care of their kids. And while she was in the house, she noticed some stark contrast with how they were living. I don't remember the name of the couple, but they were a wealthy white couple, how they had access to money. Money was a big topic that they talked about in their household, and how they made it seem like it was easy to get, right? But it was being white, it was easy to get money. I think they came from generational wealth, I'm not sure. But yet and still, they had access to money. They lived in a big house. They had all the comforts of the American dream, I would say. And Ludi, listening to this as she's working, she is a very confident woman. I would say Ludi is a beautiful woman. She is also a beautiful, she's described as being tall, nice legs, brown, pretty skin, just absolutely beautiful. Even her employers thought that she was beautiful. And in that, her being a beautiful black woman, she had to face at her employer's house, had to face discrimination or nasty looks because of what or how black women were perceived, pretty black women were perceived back in the day as being wenches, being loose, you know. And so Ludi didn't quite feel comfortable in the house, but she had an end goal. She was going to work there as long as possible to be able to save money up, so eventually she could go back to her husband and her child, and they would have a stash of cash from her working at this job until Jim could find a job. That was her original plan. When one day, y'all, one day she came home, she got a note saying that she needed to come home. So she came home, didn't give a notice or anything that she was coming home, and she finds Jim, her husband, shacking up in her house with another woman. So he has took on another woman. Now, I will say Ann Petry does a really good job at, how do I describe it? Giving us a hint of what may happen, right? Like, we kind of knew that Ludi going to take this job in another state, leaving her husband and family, was not going to turn out well for her because of something that was told to her. And Ann Petry kind of repeats it. We're constantly hearing what this lady said about it not being a good thing for her to leave her husband while she is working. But what was she supposed to do in this age, in the 40s, right? Black men weren't given opportunities either, you know. They were faced with racism. It's always been said that blacks moved to the North for better opportunities, and I'm sure there were better opportunities as opposed to the South. But even in New York, and I guess I did, reading has taught me that even people in the North face discrimination. It just wasn't as bad and maybe not in your face as in the South. But I say all that to say Jim, he struggled with finding a job. And not to say he didn't, I don't think he really put his best foot forward. I don't think so, in my opinion. I don't think he put his best foot forward in trying to find a job. He would go out, but was he really looking for a job? I think he probably was beat down and discouraged, and he just gave up. It did say that in the book, that he just gave up, you know, looking for a job, because he just was disgusted by the fact that, you know, he was a black man and he could not take care of his family. The white man was holding him down, and so he just gave up. And so, you know, Ludi makes a decision to leave that situation because Ludi has standards. She is described as beautiful, being beautiful, but Ludi is very confident. She has standards, and she believes in herself. She believes more in herself now that she's heard the people that she works for talk about money and how we can get ahead. And so I'm sure she thought about being black, but still, you know, she's been told, work hard. You can, you know, get where you want to go. If you only work hard, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, right? That's what we have heard. And so she decides to go out and leave that situation. She moves in with her father, which is not a good situation, right? That does not turn out well. And so she decides to leave and to just be a single mother and just be on her own. When you know, the book opens up, we encounter this scene of this street, right? And let me tell you, the street is definitely, I always was curious about why it was named the street, but it was named the street because the street represented the monster that was going to be the downfall of Ludi. Yeah. Yeah. And so the street is described through this book as being a place where it was daunting, A place where the walls were close together, thin walls, right? No privacy, narrow hallways, and just crowds of people being in places they're not supposed to be, hanging out, prostitution going on, just ugly things happening on this street. Anywhere where poverty exists was the street. So that is the street, and we hear about the street all through this book. It's not necessarily 116th Street where Ludi ends up in her apartment. When the book opens up, she ends up getting this apartment, and she looked at it, and she knew that it was like doom. It was doom. She was in this neighborhood she didn't want to be in because it was surrounded by bad things, right? She couldn't even buy fresh groceries, just garbage on the street. Just no good things were happening on this street. And so she is forced to settle for this street. But that also came with all the things that was going on the street, right? In her building. We meet several characters in this book. Mrs. Hedges, okay, she was part of the street. The superintendent, creepy as hell, that I can't say what I really want to say, but he was very pivotal in this book. If he did not exist, I think to myself, what would have happened to Ludi? Because he was a creepy ass superintendent with his own issues. And Petry does a really good job at describing these characters to us, like their backstories and why they're like they are. We don't meet a whole lot of characters in this book. Now, this book does have multiple perspectives told through a third person point of view. And it worked. It worked in this book. It worked in this book. Y'all, it's just so much to unpack in this book. Ludi wanted to move to a better neighborhood. She wanted to have access to good schools for her son, but the street was holding her down everywhere she went. And when she thought she had an opportunity to get out of the situation, there was the street, right? The street was represented even in people that she encountered, because they were all the things that represented the street, all things bad. No matter how hard she worked, she could not get out of this situation. And we see her silently spiraling out of control, because Ann Petry, she does this thing in this book where we hear Ludi's inner thoughts. Like, she will repeat things to herself. Ludi is smart and she has discernment, and I'm kind of like that. When I see something that's not right, I'll just pay attention to it, right? I won't ignore it. And we see her repeating things in her head about certain things she's encountering. So she's silently spiraling out of control, really, but she's still able to maintain her composure because she knows her end goal. She knows she wants to get out of this situation. But because of racism, y'all, that's just the underlying theme of this book. Racism, being a single Black woman, being held down and oppressed, she is not able to overcome the street. And we see how it affects Ludi, her son, and probably other people that we meet in the story. Of course, other people that we meet in the story. I connected with this book so much, y'all, because in the early 2000s, I had a college degree and I couldn't find a job. I was a single parent of a young boy at the time, and it was a bad situation. Now, I'm not saying that, my situation was anything compared to Ludi, but financial troubles, right? I had financial troubles. I could not, rent was always on my mind. Rent is mentioned a lot in this book because it's like people are just working to pay rent. Like, this book is so relevant in what's going on in today's society. People are struggling even today. And when I think about Ludi's situation, it also made me think about this book right here. I'll put it on the screen. I can't find it behind me. I'm kind of doing some rearranging my books and things like that. It reminded me or made me think of this book because before Ludi, there was, what was her name? Oh my God. Ona Judge. There was Ona Judge. Ona Judge had it worse, y'all. It made me think about her. Even though Ludi, wasn't as bad. Ludi had an apartment. She had a little job. But she still was held down. She was still held down and could not rise above racism and poverty and all those things, y'all. And I just cried for her. I was like halfway through the book and I cried for this lady. I did, because I knew her circumstances were really bad, and I just knew that she wasn't. I was hoping that she, I didn't know what to think with her. And this book, I want to say, is a page turner. Not like super fast. The book is moderately paced, okay, for good reasons, because we get a lot of context. We get information on all the characters. We're learning why they're doing the things that they're doing to Ludi, because they have demons of their own. This was such a brilliant book, y'all. It was a 10-star for me. And I had to come on to tell you about this book. If you have not read this book, read this book. Loved it. The ending, y'all, devastated me. It devastated me. It really did, because now I'm thinking about Ludi. I'm thinking about Bub. I'm thinking about what now. So that is my review. This is the best book I have ever read, ever read since I went on my reading journey. Read this book, The Street by Petry. It needs to be nominated for an award. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. If you've read this book, let me know what you thought about it.